Hello, everyone. Sorry for being a minute or two late, but this is live stream number 2 of the day, so I feel like I have a little excuse. All right, so this was a totally impromptu stream, but I felt like it needed to happen today because it was a timely stream. You see, I was just sitting around this morning talking to Victor when I got a phone call from Keith Ammon, who is the state representative in New Hampshire that introduced the bill to effectively ban divisive concepts related to critical race theory from being taught in state agencies and in state contractors and also potentially in schools, depending on how it is implemented. But that is ultimately the goal, is to protect people at all levels from the state indoctrinating them into this absurd, unproven, state-sanctioned racism. And so he went on New Hampshire Public Radio this morning, which is, I mean, in New Hampshire, like New Hampshire Public Radio, in some spots in New Hampshire Public Radio is like literally the only thing on the damn radio. And there is a very popular call-in show called The Exchange. And he went on this show this morning. He called me after. He's like, Carlin, this was a hit piece. That's what it was. And he kind of told me about what some of the guests said and some of the questions he was asked. And I was like, no. Unacceptable. Now, here's the thing that you guys need to know. I don't know how many of you were around when I did my 100K subscribers celebration stream. It was back in October. I know the channel hasn't grown much since then because YouTube basically quarantined it only to appear to my subscribers, but whatever. So when I hit 100K subscribers, I did this celebration stream in which I actually talked about getting myself fired from New Hampshire Public Radio back in the day, which is a true story. I worked in New Hampshire Public Radio for about a year and a half or something like that. Ended up getting myself fired. Was later completely vindicated when the CEO resigned after allegedly creating a toxic work environment. And I told that story on my 100K celebration live stream. So this is actually personal to me. I know some of the people involved in this, and I know that Laura Knoy, who is the host of The Exchange, used to be a journalist. She really did. She used to be very, very, very good, but has since ascended to being a propagandist. And if they're going to play this little propaganda game, well, guess what? Based on the numbers that I remember from when I worked there, I don't know if those numbers have changed, but I actually have more subscribers than they have listeners. And so I want to provide another side of the story when it comes to the hit job that they did on my friend, State Representative Keith Ammon, and the Divisive Concepts Bill, and right some wrongs. Now, before we get into the actual stream, Naruto wants to know, did I hear about the Fauci action figure? I did. I think it's dumb, but we're not going to talk about that right now. What I want to do is I actually want to look at the bill because based on what I've heard, and I do want this to be a true reaction to their show, but based on what I've heard, I don't think these people have actually read the bill. So we're going to just take a quick look at HB544. If you haven't, if it's been a while since you've read it or you haven't seen some of my other streams, the bill is literally 4 pages long. Okay, I keep saying 3 pages. It's 5 pages, including the cover page, but the bill is literally 4 pages long. This is not an arduous bill to read. And I just want to call out some specific provisions before we get into this stream. Number 1, on the very first page of the bill, they list all of these specific things that this bill would ban being taught in state agencies and in state contractors. It includes things like one race or sex is inherently superior to another race or sex. It includes things like you cannot teach the state of New Hampshire or the United States is fundamentally racist or sexist. You can't teach an individual by virtue of his or her race or sex is inherently sexist, racist, or oppressive, whether consciously or unconsciously. You cannot teach an individual should be discriminated against or receive adverse treatment based solely or partly on his or her race or sex. You can't teach that members of one race or sex cannot and should not attempt to treat others without respect to their race or sex. You can't teach an individual's moral character is necessarily determined by his or her race or sex. An individual by virtue of his or her race or sex bears responsibility for actions committed in the past by other members of the same race or sex. You cannot teach an individual should feel discomfort, guilt, anguish, or any other form of psychological distress on account of his or her race or sex. You cannot teach that meritocracy or traits such as hard work ethic are racist or sexist or were created by a particular race to oppress another race. And you cannot, and the last thing is the term divisive concepts includes any other form of race or sex stereotyping or race or sex scapegoating. So that's number one. That is what the bill actually says. Almost every single person that I have talked to about this bill in New Hampshire that is against this bill has not actually read the bill. That is what the bill bans. Those things that I just outlined there. But I want to bring your attention to the general provisions section at the very end of the bill. So it's on page 4 of the bill, which is why none of them have read it. Now, what I suspect we're going to hear on this show today essentially is people saying this bill would prohibit us teaching history. This bill would prohibit us teaching about slavery. We have to teach about slavery. Think of the children. I think we're going to hear stuff like that. And so in order to answer that, even before we get into this stream at all, we have to look at the general provisions section of the bill. This says, nothing in this chapter shall prevent agencies or contractors from promoting racial, cultural, or ethnic diversity and inclusiveness, provided such efforts are consistent with the requirements of the chapter. What that is saying is that you can still do your diversity training. You can still do your racial sensitivity training. You just can't teach any of the things that we just outlined, including that one race or sex is superior to another race or sex, that people should feel guilty because of how they were born, or they should feel guilty for things that happened in the past that they had no control over. You cannot teach that the United States and that New Hampshire is fundamentally racist. If you leave those things out, you can do whatever other type of diversity training you want to do. More power to you. Number 2, under general provisions, it says, nothing in this chapter shall be construed to prohibit discussing, as part of a larger course of academic instructions, the divisive concepts that we just went over in an objective manner and without endorsement. So what that is saying is that you can still actually teach that people believe these things. You can teach that there are people out there that believe these things. You just cannot teach that these things are verifiable fact. You cannot teach that these concepts are the only ideas out there. What this is saying is that you can still teach essentially that critical race theory is a thing that some people believe in, but you cannot exclude other ideologies, and you cannot exclude dissenting points of view. And you cannot say to people, well, you're a racist if you don't agree with my interpretation of the world, right? That is what that is saying. So anyone who says, we can't teach slavery, we can't teach about the Holocaust, we can't talk about racism, we can't talk about sexism, they're lying. It literally says in the bill that you can teach these things. It's in black and white, right there, for everyone to see. All right, let's see. Naruto, thank you for the super chat. Apparently the other day, BLM protested a carjacking and then immediately left upon learning, oh, the victim was white. Of course they did. All right, so what we're going to be listening to now, I don't have a visual to give you guys on this one. I'm sorry. Maybe I'll even do this. I'll even make myself a little bit bigger. So I don't know that looking at me is a better option, but okay. What we're going to do is we are going to listen to this episode of The Exchange, New Hampshire's Divisive Concepts Bill, New Hampshire House Bill 544, now an amendment to the House Bill 2, which is the state budget, would prohibit dissemination of what it calls divisive concepts. Those divisive concepts are the things that we just went over, related to race and sex in public schools, government agencies, and contractors. We speak with a support and an opponent of the bill and put our local debate into the wider context of critical race theory. And it aired today. And we have all this stuff. Is produced by Jane Vaughn, who, of course, is a little propagandist who should never be trusted as a journalist ever again, based on what I've heard about this show. If I'm wrong about that, that is an opinion. I will retract it. But let's dig into the show, and we're just going to listen to it because this is radio. Sadly, I don't have a video that I can pull up. All right. Is everyone ready to dig into this episode, and I'm going to point out every single spot in which someone lies about this bill based on the actual text of the bill, which we have there. Actually, I need to share my screen differently. Hang on. Stand by. Because I have to make sure I'm sharing the audio. Okay. Okay, now I should be sharing the audio. Okay. Please let me know if you do not hear the sound coming through.
Podcast is brought to you in part by Granite State College, Keene State College, Plymouth State University,
Blah, blah,
and the
blah.
University of New Hampshire.
Blah,
your
blah, blah.
university system. Imagine what you...
Okay, commercial.
Again, thank you for having me.
And social development makers put it in the state budget. Since then, there's been a huge amount of discussion about this bill and about critical race theory overall, and that's what we're tackling today on The Exchange. So listeners, what questions do you have? Our email.
I don't know if I can change the audio.
Exchange at
Hang on. Let me see. The sound is quiet. Huh. That is as high as the audio seems to want to go. Maybe if I expand this. Dang.
NHPR.org, and our phone number is 800-892.
Okay, guys, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn my sound down because I know my sound is a lot louder. And I need you to turn your volume up because I have no other way to do this audio thing. Okay?
6477. We're talking with Kendall Thomas. He's a professor at Columbia Law School and a leading scholar of critical race theory, law, and culture.
A leading scholar of critical race theory. Oh, this should be good. Okay.
Professor Thomas, a big welcome. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
And also with us, Sindiso Mnisi Weeks, an assistant professor at the School of Global Inclusion and Social Development at UMass Boston. And Professor Mnisi Weeks, thank you also for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me as well, Laura.
Well, Professor Thomas, summarize for us, please, this bill and others like it, because I said there are others around the country, what these bills do and what they don't do.
Well, again, thank you for having me. I am delighted to have this opportunity to talk with you, the other panelists, and your audience about the New Hampshire bill.
Please school us on the New Hampshire bill.
Ellen
please.
O'Grady wrote in the Concord Monitor in February.
Okay, I've actually covered this article from Ellen O'Grady in the Concord Monitor. Ellen O'Grady is a liar and a horrible journalist who has not told one iota of truth about this bill, so this should be good.
Is really an echo of an executive order that was issued by the Trump administration in the final months of Mr. Trump's presidency.
Trump.
I think that is an important part of the context for understanding this.
No, that's actually not an important part of the context at all, because the bill, as it turns out, actually does stand on its own, and it is not a direct photocopy of Donald Trump's executive order. Was it inspired by Donald Trump's executive order? Sure. All of these bills in all of the states were inspired by Donald Trump's executive order. You want to know why? Because Joe Biden rescinded that executive order on day flipping one. Now, at some point, they're actually going to make the argument that this is a free speech issue. This is a free speech issue. People should be able to... No. If you did not see the live stream that I did right before this, we actually discussed that teachers are an extension of the state. They are state employees. The state does not have constitutional protections. Individuals have constitutional protections. So this is in no way, shape, or form a free speech issue. Alex says, why can't the left let their racism ideology die already? It has been centuries. It honestly seems to be the only thing that gives their lives meaning. It is the only thing that gives their lives meaning, in fact. And while we're at it, your pal says, mount that like button. Thank you so much.
And what this bill sets out to do. House Bill 544 says that it is addressing a problem that it describes as the propagation of divisive concepts in schools and state workplaces, etc. And it defines divisive concepts in ways that are really quite extraordinary. and which set forth specific ideas. And that's the other thing.
Like what?
Is
like
really
what?
important.
What these people never say. They never say. This guy is not... That list that I just read you of the specific divisive concepts that this bill bans, I guarantee you, I will be shocked if this guy mentions one of those bullet points. Because every single time someone has a problem with something in this bill, we say, okay, which of these specific divisive concepts don't you agree with? They never answer any of them. This guy is not going to list any of the divisive concepts. He's going to use lots of big, fluffy language and talk in academic speak, and he's not actually going to say what's in the flipping bill that he disagrees with.
To note about this proposed legislation, it is not a ban on, not just a ban on speech, but...
Guys, if you're complaining about the volume, there's literally nothing I can do about it. I've turned down my volume. I suggest that you turn up your speakers if you can't hear it. This is the best I can do. I am sorry. This is what I have. There's no volume indicator on the thing. I can't do anything about it. Alexandra Martin says, have you mounted that like button yet? And you're, oh, thank you, your pal. I will use that for my weekly happy hour stream on Friday. I appreciate it. Thank you.
It's a ban on ideas.
No.
On thought.
No.
So this law is...
No. See, this is the bill bans ideas. The bill bans thought. No, it doesn't. It literally doesn't. You can think whatever the flip you want. It literally says in the bill, you can teach every single concept in the bill. You just can't teach it as verifiable fact because it is not verifiable fact, which we just read. Let's see if journalist Laura Canoy challenges this at all. I'm going to guess no.
Trying to police thoughts.
No.
In the name
Wrong.
Of preventing division. And you could really drive a Mack truck through the language.
Really? Then cite the language. Then cite the language, Kendall.
Because it's really hard to know what a divisive topic or divisive concept is when...
It's actually not hard at all because it's clearly defined in the bill that I just read. It is not hard at all. That is completely wrong.
One of the things that is prohibited is any form of race or sex stereotyping.
Yes.
Any form of race or sex stereotyping. Indeed, it's also really hard to know what the language of the bill means when it says that people can't teach, instruct, or train any student to adopt or believe any one of the ideas that is listed in the bill.
Okay, Kendall Thomas, professor at Columbia Law School, why do you want to instruct New Hampshire school children to believe that one race or sex is superior to another race or sex? Why is that something that they should learn? Would you have the same problem if the teacher was a member of the KKK? Would you have the same issues about restricting thoughts and speech? No, of course you wouldn't. No, I have no idea how to do this. And I have a Mac. I appreciate the thoughts, but there's literally no way for me to control the volume of this. I'm sorry. You guys are going to have to figure it out. I'm sorry. It is what it is.
So I'm very troubled by the language of this bill as an educator. And I'm very troubled by this bill as someone who has a background in the law, because there seem to me also to be real First Amendment problems.
See?
Really on what amounts to...
No. This guy teaches at Columbia Law School. And he does not know that the First Amendment does not apply to the state. The First Amendment applies to the citizens. And in addition to that, the First Amendment also prevents compelled speech. When the state, in the form of state agencies, state contractors, or schools, are forcing people to say they are racist or they are oppressors, that is compelled speech. That is unconstitutional. Alex says he wants to teach racism because it's all he knows. That's probably the truth.
A gag rule. It's a gag rule not.
And I also want to note that he actually hasn't read any of the specific provisions in the bill. He's talked about the race or sex scapegoating thing, but that's about as general as you can get.
Not just on what folks can say, but really on what folks can even think.
No.
Well, and I want to let listeners know that we will, in the second part of our show, talk to one of the sponsors of the bill. So we can definitely discuss some of those First Amendment issues that you raised, Professor Thomas.
Oh, and Laura Knoy, journalist, who maybe has not even read the bill herself. I dearly hope she has, because Laura Knoy is so much smarter than this, and she's so much better than this, and she's actually leaving NHPR next month, I found out. And I suspect maybe it's because they're making her be a little propagandist. I'm just saying, the woman spent a career as a journalist, and now she's doing propaganda. But I just want to point out that she didn't challenge any of that. Every single thing that guy just said could literally be challenged by a simple reading of the 4-page flipping bill. 4 pages. That is all that it is. Every single thing could have been challenged, but it wasn't, because this is not journalism. This is propaganda. Alex says again, thank you for the super chat. I missed the 90s and 2000s sticks and stones. He knew that citing anything would kill his propaganda. That is exactly right. This is why they never, ever, 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 ever talk about the actual language of the bill.
At that point. But Professor Mnisi Weeks, I want to bring you into...
And I also want to point out, too, that they front-loaded the episode. They have all the opposition to the bill at the beginning of the episode, and they bring Keith in at the very end to tell his side of the story. Richard Method, thank you for the super chat. Yes, another live broadcast. Keep it up. I will be doing another live broadcast on Friday at 3 p.m., my usual happy hour live stream. So mark your calendars.
How do you think we're seeing these bills right now?
Because Joe Biden rescinded Donald Trump's executive order.
It's been a thing that's been brewing for a while. So the fact that, there has been this sort of growing embrace of critical race theory informed ideas in the popular imagination has sort of taken root in ways that have made certain sections of the population uncomfortable, and certain sections of the population that are represented by people like the former president. And
so she's basically saying, like, oh, it just makes conservatives uncomfortable. That's what it is. Conservatives are living in a magic fantasy land where this is just a figment of their imagination. It just makes them uncomfortable to talk about racism. How much you want to bet? Who wants to bet that she's going to pull out a white fragility reference? Anyone in the chat? Any takers?
One of the spaces where I've seen that sort of fixation on these ideas become really prevalent is in sort of Christian communities where a lot of sort of white,
wrong. In fact, Christianity is actively going woke right now. Many churches are actually teaching this crap. So that is completely wrong. This person has just lost all credibility. She has absolutely no godly idea what she's talking about. This is an assistant professor at the School for Global Inclusion and Social Development at University of Massachusetts. Excellent. Sydney, hey, you salty dog. Keep up the great work, Ma. Love you. Thank you, Sydney. I appreciate that. Sparks Hearts 21 says, thanks for inspiring me to get involved and write letters to my representatives. Yeah, guys, we got to speak up. Now's the time. Now is the time. Yes, Diane, it is easy to read and well written. It is. All right, let's see if she makes a white fragility reference.
Christian communities and speakers or sort of public personalities have sort of demonized the idea of critical race theory as being essentially, something that's tantamount to being of the devil. And we know
what the
how
fuck?
Significant.
Okay. She just said that Christian personalities have demonized critical race theory for being like the devil. I think about critical race theory almost every waking hour. I see curriculums all the time. A, I'm not a Christian. B, I have literally never heard anyone, not a single person, say that critical race theory is the devil. I have talked about it being a demonic, toxic exercise, but I'm not saying literally it's the devil. I just think it's incredibly toxic. Oh my God. NHPR, man, you got to do a better job of vetting your people. Like, I'm like 20 minutes into this stream. I'm only like 5 minutes into your conversation, and these people already like have no idea what they're talking about. Yeah, Viking Insane says critical thinking is the devil. That's that is their playbook, isn't it? Oh my God.
To voice that sort of subset of the sort of population has in the electoral system, and
this woman is literally making this up.
Significance and
they're making this up.
The Trump administration gave that sort of demographic, and so I think that
they're making this up.
It's to be honest, my perspective is,
and you can tell she's making it up too, because she's saying words that don't actually mean anything. She's like, Christians bad, the former president, Trump bad. Like, that's all that they're saying. They haven't spoken to the bill at all.
That those people who are benefited by this system,
white privilege, white fragility,
who
drink,
feel that the attention that is drawn to the ways in which the system benefits some people much more than others, and benefits some people in many ways at the expense of others, want to find some way to sort of deflect, right? And so,
is that what it is? Okay, we're all just deflecting on our white privilege because we're all just crazy fundamentalist Christians, even if we aren't a Christian, apparently. Whatever, man. Alex, thank you again for the super chat. Projecting the devil onto themselves. LOL. They are self-aware. Waterboy meme. Our need to come back. Yeah. Indeed.
Without saying that things are being done deliberately necessarily, I do think that there is
things are being done deliberately.
This conversation is a red herring. This obsession with these notions,
I have evidence of critical race theory being taught in schools up and down the state of New Hampshire. I have evidence of it being taught in businesses, not just in New Hampshire, but all over the country. I mean, this is documented. This is not a theory. This is not theoretical. We have the evidence. We presented it many times. In the largest school district in New Hampshire, they made their teachers and staff undergo white fragility training. Like, we have all the evidence of all of this.
Views that are being taught, and the way in which we're learning to understand the brokenness of the system as being a function of design, and something that we can actually
none of this has to do with the bill. None of this has to do with the bill at all.
Drawing away from the focus on bad apples to recognizing the system as a whole as essentially fueling the inequality.
Did she just say our entire system is a bad apple? Watch how Laura Knoy, journalist, will not challenge this at all. This woman is literally saying the entire system is a bad apple, which is what I've been telling you guys. Like, critical race theory has nothing to do with race. It has to do with destabilizing the system.
Qualities that we see in society and the injustices that we see in society, that is, attention is being deflected from that. And I think that, this is useful for certain political actors, right?
Certain political actors.
But unfortunately, it comes at the expense of our actually addressing very real social problems that affect not just Black, Indigenous, and people of color, but actually everybody.
Okay, so what she just said, remember I told you at the very beginning, what they're going to say is that this bill prevents us from teaching racism. And I've already disproven that by citing the general provisions section of the bill, which literally says you can teach anything in this bill, you just can't teach it as objective fact. I mean, maybe not literally, but if we summarize what that section says, it's saying you can teach all this, you just can't teach it as objective fact. You have to say, some people believe this, some people believe that, and you cannot tell people they can't dissent. So everything this woman says, I told you that this was coming, because these are the only arguments that they have. They never cite the bill, they never cite what the bill says, and they're not challenged by journalists like the propagandists at NHPR, who are more interested in presenting a narrative than they are in actually telling the truth.
Including white people as well.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the rhetoric.
Challenge her, Laura.
Professor Mnisi Weiss,
Challenge her.
Tantamount to the devil. I have seen that too. Professor Thomas.
Laura, you are such a liar. I want evidence that Laura Knoy has seen anyone say that critical race theory is tantamount to the devil. I want that evidence. Tweet out that evidence, NHPR Exchange. I demand evidence that you've actually seen that, because I don't believe you for one red second. I'm in this all day, every day, and I've literally never seen that. So show your receipts, man. Jesus Christ.
I was reading something just this morning that said
What?
critical race theory is like Marxism.
Oh,
I read something yesterday.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is Marxism the same as the devil? Yes, critical race theory leads to Marxism. It is a Marxist ideology. Yeah, that is actually what it is. In actual fact, it is descended from the Frankfurt School. It is a Marxist ideology.
That said it's like the Cultural Revolution in China.
Yes, true, which we've actually in New Hampshire. I wonder if Laura Kanoy, journalist, why didn't they invite Lily Tang Williams on this show, who is someone who grew up during the Cultural Revolution in China and is now running around the state of New Hampshire trying to teach people how this is exactly like the Cultural Revolution in China? Laura, or producer Jane, why didn't you invite Lily Tang Williams on your show to talk about how this is similar to the Cultural Revolution in China? Because me, as a YouTuber, I had a conversation with Lily Tang Williams months ago. Why haven't you, if you're doing actual journalism? Viking Insane says, much of the social history of the Western world over the past 3 decades has evolved, replacing what worked with what sounded good. Thomas Sowell. I'm sure it's racist to cite that in some way, shape, or form.
What is critical race theory, Professor Thomas?
Yes, yes, Professor Thomas. What is critical race theory?
Because Professor Nisi Weeks reminds us there's a lot of rhetoric around this.
Thank you. Let me just say that one important thing to take away from this conversation about House Bill 544 is that it has very little to do with critical race theory. As you may know,
I'm sorry, what? Okay, so James Lindsay's been talking about this on Twitter the last couple of days. So what they're starting to do now, this is their next argument. So they know that they're losing. They know that momentum is on our side. So that's when they descend into the free speech argument, is when they know they're losing, when their calls to call everyone a racist doesn't work anymore. So when they start to lose the free speech battle, which we've already kind of debunked that myth, the next thing they go to is, you don't know what critical race theory actually is. You're not defining it correctly. And so now what's going to happen is this professor who doesn't know what he's talking about is going to give some weird, vague definition of critical race theory that has no relevance to actually how it's implemented in the real world. Let's listen.
I am an editor of the first collection of critical race theory writings that was published in the United States.
Oh, congratulations.
Of propositions or divisive concepts in House 544 that the legislators behind this bill are seeking to address, I couldn't help but conclude first that they're addressing a fake problem, and two,
they're addressing a fake problem. Then why do I have a mountain of evidence that I have shown some of on this channel and have shown other parts to actual citizens in New Hampshire? If this is a fake problem, then why do I have mountains of evidence that it's real and it's happening in schools and in organizations right now? Wait, was the Coke Be Less White training just a figment of our collective imaginations? Because I seem to remember that actually being a real thing that got pulled off of LinkedIn because people thought it was so crazy. Did I make that up? What was the 27 million views I got on that tweet? Were those all Russian bots? Were they all fake? Please.
That problem has very little to do with any claims that critical race...
And furthermore, if the bill has nothing to do with critical race theory, then why are they all so upset about it? If it has nothing to do with it, and this is all just a figment of our imagination, then why are they fighting it so hard? Because here's the thing. If this stuff is not happening in the classroom, if it's not happening in organizations, then what are you afraid of? If it's not happening, then passing the bill does literally nothing. Fine, we have an extra legislation. You can't teach the people that one race is superior to another. Good. Wasn't happening anyway. So then what does it matter? The only reason that they're fighting it so hard is because they know it's the truth. Because if it wasn't the truth, it wouldn't matter. Your pal says, mount that like button, folks. Do it. You know you want to.
Theorists have made. For example, the notion that one group of people is inherently superior to another group of people, or that one group of people, by virtue of their race or sex, ought to feel guilty about the fact that they belong to that race or sex. None of these ideas are ideas that have anything at all to do with critical race theory. So the attack on critical...
Then why are you worried about the bill? Then why does it matter? If these ideas have nothing to do with critical race theory, then why are we even having this conversation right now? It doesn't matter. If you pass a bill saying you can't own more than 15 cats, guess what? I don't give a flip about that bill because I own dogs because cats suck. I'm sorry to all the cat owners. I'm sure your cats are lovely, but I don't want to own more than 15 cats. And so it doesn't really bother me that much that you passed a 15 cat limit bill. It might bother me enough from like a freedom perspective, but that's like, maybe it's a bad example. But the point is that I wouldn't care about the bill at all because it actually has no impact on my life. It has zero impact on my life whatsoever because I don't want to own 15 cats. I only want to own dogs. If they passed a bill that says you can't own any more than 2 dogs, I might have an issue with that because that actually affects my life. If this bill has nothing to do with critical race theory, as per the professor from Columbia Law School is arguing right now, then what is the problem? Why are you so afraid of it, Kendall?
Race theory, like the noise that the Republican Party, let's be frank, we're talking about a Republican Party initiative, like the noise that...
It's the Republicans! It's the Republicans! I saw a study the other day that said that people would basically they're wearing masks because they don't want to be perceived as a Republican. They're afraid to take off their masks, even if they're vaccinated, because they don't want to be perceived as a Republican. Oh, it's the evil Republicans, the evil Trump supporters. Oh!
The Republican Party has been making about cancel culture and the like is just another attempt to shut down the emerging national conversation about institutional racism. It's also...
Kendall, how could it possibly shut down the conversation when the bill literally says you can teach whatever you want to teach? You just can't teach it as verifiable fact when it is not. You have to teach other perspectives. You have to allow for people to have other perspectives. You have to allow people to tell you that your ideas are dumb without calling them a racist. Jeez. Thank you. Keep fighting. You know I will. JV says, wasn't he asked what critical race theory is? He was, in fact, asked what critical race theory is. And of course, he has not given us an answer as of yet. Carlin, don't you know cats are associated with the devil. Exactly.
Oh, a pretty cynical strategy to deflect attention from the right-wing identity politics that increasing numbers of Republicans at the federal and state level are either openly embracing or willing to shut their eyes to, right? So what is critical race theory?
We're getting our definition. Okay.
Offers
Get ready.
An evidence-based account of the nature and...
Critical race theory offers an evidence-based account? What? There is zero evidence that critical race theory is actually effective at doing anything. There is no evidence to back up critical race theory. None. Kendall, I invite you to show me the evidence that you have to say that critical race theory is an evidence-based account of anything, please.
Workings of institutional racism or structural racism.
I would like evidence of actual institutional racism or structural racism, please.
Racism. Critical race theory challenges us to see that the problem we face of racial injustice in America that we've long faced.
Wait, Benjamin brings up a good point. He's actually more confident in Republicans than I am right now. This is 100% true. The left are way more confident in the Republican Party than I am at this point. If they only knew. God.
Of racial justice in America isn't and has never been just a problem of isolated instances of individual bias or private prejudice that we can solve by enacting so-called colorblind laws and policies.
If that's true, then you shouldn't be worried about this bill. If that's all true, then this bill would literally make no difference. Andrew B. says the media pretends Marxism isn't real because they're Marxists and they're indoctrinated to know it. I genuinely hope that Laura Knoy knows that this is a hit piece, and that's why she's leaving. In my fantasy land, in which Laura Knoy has any remaining integrity left as a journalist, I genuinely hope that she knows what this is, because I had so much respect for that woman. The fact that she's not challenging this at all, the fact that she's not saying anything, we're going to see how this goes, but I really hope that she's leaving because she knows she's being made to be a propagandist.
So critical race theory provides an account of what one scholar called racism without racists. It tries to track and describe
racism without racist. You guys call people racist literally all the time over anything. Racism without racist.
Describe the ways in which the color.
Is that going to be the next talking point for this? That people really are. You've only been calling people racist for the past 4 years for every infraction that you don't like, but now you're going to say, "Oh, you're not actually racist," but you are. But you aren't. But you are. Because what Robin DiAngelo teaches is that every white person is racist. Every white person is socialized to be racist, and they're born racist, and they will always be racist, and they start becoming aware of their racism around 3 years old, and they will be racist their entire lives, no matter how much work they do. And now all of a sudden we're switching gears to say, no, you aren't really racist. No, please.
Blind racism of today's post-civil rights
colorblind racism
entrenches racial disparity,
So if you don't treat people differently, what he just said, colorblind racism, if you don't treat people differently based on the color of their skin, then you're guilty of colorblind racism. If I have a black person in front of me and a white person in front of me, and I talk to them both like they're real life human beings and get to know them as individuals, I am now guilty, apparently, of colorblind racism. Excellent.
Inequality, racial discrimination, and disadvantage among Black, Brown, and Native American communities.
What about the Asians? What about all of a sudden they don't care about the Asians anymore. They cared about the Asians for like 2 weeks, and we don't care about the Asians anymore. The Asians are at the bottom of the hierarchy again.
Even when the language of
Black,
race
Brown,
is
Native
not
American
explicitly used. Now, you asked me for a description of critical race theory.
Yes, and we're still waiting, Kendall.
Another important thing to remember about House Bill 544 is that the so-called divisive concepts that it tries to silence have to do not only with race.
Just a reminder that you can teach literally every concept listed in the bill as long as you are not teaching it as verifiable facts. So there's no silencing them. You just have to allow people to disagree with you.
Race, but with sex. And that is a huge problem, particularly in a moment when New Hampshire, like many other states, is struggling with things like the gender pay gap, right?
The gender pay gap is all of a sudden a real thing. Okay, the gender pay gap is not real. When you account for hours worked, the type of job, and other factors like women don't negotiate salaries, the gender pay gap disappears to nothing. The gender pay gap is not a real thing. The state of New Hampshire is not struggling with the gender pay gap. And there is no evidence. He's talking about critical race theory being an evidence-based ideology. There is absolutely no evidence that Kendall can provide to say that it is. And Sarah Nicholas says, mount that like button.
Business New Hampshire in March of 2020 published an article in which they noted that the gender pay gap in New Hampshire has gotten worse in your state in the last 10 years. And
what happens when you account for the type of job they're working, the number of hours they worked, and that women don't negotiate their salaries and so tend to have lower salaries because of that? Like, why don't these people ever actually advocate for women to negotiate their salaries? Why don't they run negotiation courses to teach women to negotiate salaries? If you want to make more money, dude, you have to ask for it. That's how it works.
In fact, once women get a college education, that pay gap grows even wider.
Because they don't negotiate their salaries. Thank you, Jessica, for the super chat. I appreciate it.
Hampshire ranks 45th nationwide in gender pay.
And by the way, this bill has literally nothing to do with the gender pay gap. Has nothing to do with it. This bill, if passed, is going to have zero impact on what he perceives to be the gender pay gap like it's not even a real thing, but like this has nothing to do with it. He still as of yet has not defined critical race theory effectively, and now he's changed the topic to something completely different that doesn't really exist.
Quality. Women make 74 cents to every dollar that a man makes.
So they should negotiate.
That's a fact. And in this post-fact age,
not
only women, but everybody is hurt when you say, well, if you talk about that, you're...
I've actually never been hurt by the so-called gender pay gap. You want to know why? Because I learned to negotiate my salary. I learned how to ask for more money. I learned how to value what I was doing enough to say that I am worth more money. Everyone should do that. Everyone's perfectly capable of doing that. Women just tend not to.
Suggesting that men believe they are inherently superior to women. No, we're talking about
literally no one said that.
Of our society, a society which historically
okay, I could keep correcting this whole gender pay gap thing, but I'm just going to let it go because I feel like I've made my point on this one. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's not factoring in hours worked. He's not factoring in the type of work that women tend to gravitate to versus men gravitating to. And he's not factoring in that women don't negotiate their salaries. Your pal said, I had a CA harassment training today. It said because women accept lower pay, that is discrimination by the employer. Dude! That's not true. I mean, California's weird with employment law, but you accepted a salary. You accepted a salary. It's your choice to negotiate or not. Fishing, Friends and Fishing with Paul says, you're a beautiful person. Ask for more money. Yes, always ask for more money. Guys, like, honestly, this is probably the best life lesson you can get from this chat right now. When an employer offers you a salary, they are doing it expecting you to come back and negotiate. You can ask for more money. You can ask for more time off. You can ask for a raise within like 3 or 6 months or what have you. There are all sorts of things that you can negotiate, and the employer is generally expecting you to. So if you just accept the first offer and you say, oh, this sounds great, and you like, that's your fault, man. That's your fault. Always go back and ask for more money, because here, like, one of two things is going to happen if you go back and you ask for more money. One, they're going to say yes. Two, actually one of three things. Two, they're going to say no, but we can do this instead. Three, they might say, oh no, never mind. I've only actually seen this happen once where someone went back and asked for more money and they were like, nope, never mind if you don't want our offer. And guess what? If an employer is going to pull an offer because you asked for more money, then you don't want to work there. That is a blessing in disguise. Always, always, always 1000% of the time, ask for more money. If they aren't willing to give you more money, ask for better benefits. Ask for, I mean, everyone has work at home now, but like travel allowances, moving allowance, whatever it is, whatever fringe benefits you can come up with, they can replace more money with other benefits. So always ask. Always, always, always.
Discriminated against women as a social group and benefited men as a social group. That fact is not going to go away by imposing a gag rule on discussions of that history.
There is no gag rule on discussions of that history. I wonder if Laura Kanoy, who I don't think has read the bill, is going to challenge that, because as I've already pointed out, you can literally talk about all these things. Says so right in the bill. Says so right in the bill that no one has read.
Wow, there's a lot there, and
I
have so many more questions, but both of you listeners are really wanting to weigh.
Great challenge, Laura. Great challenge, Laura Kanoy, journalist. Oh, wow, I have so many questions. There's so much to unpack. Great challenge to all the bullshit that he just said that had no relevance to the goddamn question that you asked. Journalist.
In on this conversation. So let's go to them. Again, we're talking about the Divisive Concepts Bill today in the Exchange and the debate about critical race theory that it represents. And we'd love to hear from you. You can send us an email, exchange@nhpr.org, or give us a call, 800-892-6477. And Professor Thomas, Professor Mnisi Weeks, let's go to our listeners. Pedro's joining us from Concord. Hi, Pedro. Thanks for calling in today. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. And Laura, thank you so much for your service. We surely missed at NHPR. So I just wanted to thank you and give you some time. Thank you to the panelists for this. Thank you for the panelists for having this very, very important discussion. I'll just preface that I am also a person of color. I identify as Afro-Latino, and I'm living in New Hampshire. So for 11 years, I've dedicated my life to understanding the Granite State, its people, and its culture, while sharing insight on the untapped potential it has to host a diverse population and fruitful economy with opportunity and a sustainable community vitality with cultural welcomeness. So I can speak on behalf of a lot of people who share the same kind of
I'm sure this is
intersection
racist,
that
but I'm
I
doing
identify
this.
with. That we are just so tired of supporting and fighting and living in a state that does not love us the same.
Then move to another state. If you don't like it here, then move to another. Dude, like, it's not even hard to move to another state when you live in New Hampshire. You can move to Vermont. You can move to Maine. You can move to Massachusetts. It's really not that hard. If you don't like it here, then move to another state. It's that simple. People do it all the time. It's not hard.
In 2010, I uprooted my life to move to New Hampshire.
Congratulations. In 2011, I did the same thing, and New Hampshire is like not a racist state at all. Come on.
For the opportunity to achieve success that no one in my family or in my community has ever accomplished.
And P.S., my husband moved to New Hampshire as an immigrant with no money and seems to be doing quite well today. I know these are lived experiences, but it is what it is.
And hoping to make a lasting impact on communities suffering from the same systems that keep us from there. And this bill is exactly that.
What are you even talking about, dude?
I was following this bill during its inception, and co-sponsor of the bill, Representative Ammon of Hillsborough, stated that American tradition is not racist, that it's not sexist.
Yes.
Well, tradition is only as good as it is in practice, and as we even lightly graze.
So what this caller wants to be able to do is to teach people that New Hampshire is a racist state and the United States is founded in racism. That's what he wants. Let's just be clear.
Through American history, I would say otherwise. You know, in this situation, we absolutely need to look at the facts and follow the receipts that our past is racist and that America is still racist and sexist, but it's not irredeemable. Our future is not.
He's mad. This caller is mad that this bill would prevent him from propagating his propaganda using state taxpayer money. That's why he's calling in. He's mad. Jenny's getting inky with it, said, I would rather my salad be in the form of vegetables. It's healthier. Wonder if they toss their word salad. I don't know, man.
Have to be. So though 544 was...
Even Laura's like, okay, get to your question.
Has been tabled till next session. The language of the bill is now in the state budget, which shows, if anything, more alarming intention to fiscally invest in dishonesty over what has...
Well, actually, no. It's actually an intention to disinvest from dishonesty because the bill prevents state money from teaching nonsense. It is not an intention to invest more money. It is an intention to disinvest. If you want to be able to teach these concepts, then don't take state money. That's really the beginning and the end of it. Student of history says, Pedro's a long-winded simp, FFS. Spit it out, bud. If you have decided to move somewhere and actively change it, then you don't need to be there, period. Yeah, move somewhere else, dude. Move to Boston. Boston's an hour away. It's not that far.
And what continues to transpire over American history.
Well, and Pedro, I appreciate the call, and I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for weighing in to bring a couple more listeners in. We've got a lot of people who want to weigh in on this conversation.
I wish I totally would have called in, but they would have never let me on air. It would have never happened, but I totally should have called in.
Carolyn's joining us from Hanover. Hi, Carolyn. You're on the exchange. Go ahead.
Hi. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Sure.
My question is for the two current panelists, and I'd like to hear how you would respond to a claim that we're hearing a lot with regard to this bill, specifically teaching students about divisive concepts makes students racist.
Teaching students about divisive concepts. Well, if you're teaching the students that one race is superior to another race, yes, you are literally making them racist. If you are teaching students that people should feel guilty because of the color of their skin, that's racist. That's literal racism. If you are teaching people that they should feel guilty because of things that their ancestors have done in the past based on the color of their skin, that's literal freaking racism. That's racism. That's racist.
Wow. Say that again, Carolyn, because that's complicated. Yeah, go ahead.
Yep, it is. So
I did.
We have heard frequently.
I did used to work for New Hampshire Public Radio. I got myself fired in spectacular fashion.
That the very act of teaching about racism or
No.
about sexism
No.
makes students racist.
No, that's not what any proponent of the bill has been saying. That is not true. Now, maybe this caller just doesn't understand. Most people don't really understand critical race theory. That is not the argument that is being made. In fact, as I've shown in the general provision section of the bill, you can still teach about racism. You can still teach about sexism. You just can't teach people that one race is superior to another race. So no proponent of the bill is saying this. This woman is making this up. Maybe she just doesn't understand. I don't know.
Or sexist.
I see what you're saying. Okay, Carolyn, thank you for calling. And Professor Nisi Weeks, what do you think?
Yeah, thank you so much to your callers. Such important points. I'm especially just moved by Pedro's reflection, which I think touches on so many really crucial points. I guess some of the things that I want to pick up on is.
Wait. So Jack says, I'm a UNH student. A few years back, I actually witnessed a struggle session at UNH personally. This S needs to go. Yeah, I mean, I've covered 2 webinars that UNH gave. Actually, one of the webinars told their white employees that their job was to shut up and just adopt this ideology.
Pedro's essentially pointing to the fact that, New Hampshire is better than this, right? New Hampshire is braver than this, right? Like, he came here because of the promise of equality for all, right? And the reality is that hasn't been realized in very much the terms that Professor Thomas set out earlier. And so, for HB544 to silence that,
has New Hampshire Public Radio managed to locate any blacks who defend HB? Yes, I can provide them with contact information of black people who agree with HB544. I can also present them with Asian people who agree with HB544. If you want to get in touch, NHPR, Laura Kanoy, journalist, I'm happy to connect you with those individuals.
Is not actually going to help anybody, because the reality is very well documented and very well proven that there are severe inequalities, along racial and sex and other identity lines. And so, no problem has ever been addressed without actually naming it and confronting it. And so that's really crucial. And then, Professor Thomas spoke earlier about how, we don't, it is against the very ethos of the United States, the First Amendment, to ban speech, right? Just because it offends someone.
I'm sorry I have to do this, guys, but I'm going to have to stop this recording every single time they say this bill bans speech. The bill very explicitly does not ban speech. It does not. It does not ban speech. It says in the bill you can teach all this stuff. You just can't teach it as verifiable fact. You can think whatever you want. You can even, when you are outside of your role as a state flipping employee, you can go to whatever anti-racist seminars you want to go to. You can teach those anti-racist seminars. You can get private citizens to pay you money to tell them they are racist. You can do all of these things. It is perfectly acceptable. You just can't do it with our taxes.
The reality is that, HB544 is not suggesting.
Christian, one of my favorite people, asked, is New Hampshire Public Radio a part of NPR? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. This is NPR. They're an NPR affiliate. Yes.
That there's hate speech here. It is just essentially pointing to the fact that some people might be offended by certain speech and certain ideas. But of course, that is what makes for a vigorous debate.
I'm sorry. Did these people just say that it's okay to be offended by ideas? Excuse me, what? These people who are like, silence is violence, silence is complicity, who can't even decide whether you want people to speak or not, they're saying, oh, well, we're supposed to have a vigorous debate of ideas. You can have a vigorous debate of ideas, but in order to have a vigorous debate of ideas, you actually need to present separate ideas. What happens when this ideology is in classrooms is that they only present this ideology and they only present it as fact, and we have all the evidence in the world to say that this is true. So when one ideology is being presented as absolute fact to children whose logic center of their brain has not fully developed, You are not allowing for a vigorous debate of ideas. Oh no, NPR is uber woke. Uber woke.
And so it is totally appropriate that we should be able to have these conversations. And so I guess that takes me to Karen's point, right, about this idea of divisive concepts. I'm a parent. I am also an educator. And I have got to say that I deeply disagree with the idea that, teaching students about these so-called divisive concepts makes them racist or sexist. Because the reality is that it teaches our students to be able to handle nuance. It teaches our children to be able to hold things in tension. I don't know any.
Teaching students that one race or sex is superior to another race or sex teaches them nuance. Teaching students that an individual, by virtue of his or her race or sex, is inherently racist teaches them nuance. Teaching students whose logic function of their brain is not fully developed that an individual's moral character is necessarily determined by his or her race or sex teaches nuance. Excuse me? What?
In life who has experienced life to be black and white. Life is all about the gray. It's all about holding contradictory sometimes ideas and objectives.
Do you mean contradictory ideas like teaching students that one race or sex is superior to another race or sex is nuanced? Do you mean like those two contradictory ideas? Okay.
Intention and trying to balance them and figure out and problem solve. And that's what makes
these
America
people literally just make shit up.
That's what makes America.
She's making this up,
right? The fact that it is a country that stands for the ideals of independent thinking, of innovative problem solving, of confronting hard, uncomfortable, and contested truths. Its foundation.
White fragility. We hit it. Yes.
Right? Contestation against.
Who in the chat anticipated that she was going to say something white fragility like, because she just did. This is just about having tough conversations. No, it's not, dude. No, it's not. Stop lying to people. Assistant professor for global inclusion and social development at University of Massachusetts.
But also contestation within.
Stop lying to people.
The abolition of slavery happened through contestation within. Contestation makes us stronger. It makes us more innovative. It makes us, people who are able to think better and to come up with better solutions. And so I guess I would just say that there is nothing further from the truth in saying that divisive concepts or teaching students, quote unquote, divisive concepts, which I agree with Professor Thomas, what critical race theory stands for are not divisive concepts.
Just a reminder that they have yet to actually define critical race theory. We are, halfway through this conversation? They have yet to define it.
In that sense, they are
20
concepts
minutes.
That,
Sorry.
And are not concepts that are represented in HB544, but are concepts that help us to understand that it is the system.
I just want to point out as well that they have yet to actually list the divisive concepts that the bill bans. We're 20 minutes into this show. They haven't listed it yet.
And we can actually fix the system.
Journalism.
And I love that. Statement from Pedro that we can actually do something about this. So let's stop being distracted by, false ideologies and ideas.
Yes, I agree with that. Let's stop being distracted by false ideologies, like critical race theory.
That try to insist that identifying and naming a problem that is grounded in reality, such as racial inequality and sex-based discrimination, is to actually worsen the problem. The problem can only be solved by naming it and identifying it.
If only the bill had specific provisions that said you could still teach all this stuff. If only that was true. If only there was a specific section in the bill that said that you can teach all of this stuff as long as you don't teach it as verifiable fact and you teach it from an objective viewpoint. If only that was true. Oh, wait, it is true, which I just pointed out at the beginning of the goddamn video. It's like I know how to anticipate what arguments these people are going to make because they make the same arguments over and over and over and over and over again. They never deviate. They say racist, then they say transphobic, then they say sexist, then they say free speech, and now they're saying, well, you really don't understand critical race theory. It's the same arguments every goddamn time. Every time.
Confronting it wholly.
We have a lot more to talk about. We have to take a very short break. When we come back...
And you'll notice Laura Knoy, journalist, didn't just challenge any of that. She never even got an answer to her question, what is the definition of critical race theory? Didn't challenge it at all, because this is propaganda. This is not journalism. This is not news. This is propaganda. I saw someone out. Oh, Scott, I saw you ask, is it happy hour time? Sadly, I am not drinking today. But if you join me on Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern time, we will do our typical Friday happy hour where I drink and we watch a critical race theory training of some sort and make fun of it and mock it. So Friday at 3 p.m. if you want to see me get drunk. Sadly, I'm not drunk right this second.
Two Granite Staters will give their local take on the divisive concepts bill. We'll talk with us.
And I just want to point out again for people who've joined, they're front-loading the entire episode with negative content about this bill because they don't actually want to have a discussion. Laura Knoy could have, like, Lily Tang Williams would have been psyched to be invited to this. Lily Tang Williams planned and executed a very successful rally against critical race theory outside of the Concord State House, which is right down the street from where NHPR is. They could have contacted her and said, Lily, you want to come on our show and share your experiences and share your thoughts as an immigrant and a woman in this country? Do you want to come on? They could have done that. They chose not to do that. They chose to front load the entire episode with people who are against the bill and just bring Keith on, Representative Ammon, at the very end to like be their punching bag. That is exactly what they did. JV says, who wants to bet she's going to get very confrontational with the pro-bill people? Yeah, I would take that bet. It's just Carlin getting pissed off right now. Goddamn right. Goddamn right. You know what really pisses me off? When people who are journalists and are trusted with, when I first went to work at NHPR, what I was told is we are stewards of the public dollar. It is our responsibility to use that money well. Well, right now, NHPR is using their position as stewards of the public dollar to spread propaganda about this bill. And I'm not going to fucking have it. No, not going to do it. Ty Green says, I just wanted to say I love your content. You're super smart and also hilarious. Thank you, Ty. I appreciate that. Look, NHPR, a black man who likes my content. Oh my God, maybe I'm not actually a racist. Thank you, Ty. I appreciate that. Student of history. All right. If I am incorrect about CRT, then please define in short and concise terms. Please give me the definition of CRT. No filler. Just give the definition. Exactly. Guys, do not donate money to public radio. P.S. Don't do it. These stories I could tell you about how screwed up public radio are. I stopped listening to it. Like, when I got myself fired, I stopped listening to public radio because I was so pissed at my experience there. It was so bad. And I'm not just talking about the one place like NHPR, which is where I worked. I mean, everywhere. It is like this across the entire system. I have interviewed people that were bullied so badly working at public radio stations. It's ridiculous. Stop giving money to public radio. Do not support them. They're not good people.
Porter and an opponent, and we'll take a lot more of your questions and comments. So keep it right here. This is The Exchange on NHPR.
Andrew B., NPR is Newspeak. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Come on. If I try to fast forward this, it's going to colossally screw up, so we're just going to let it go.
This is The Exchange.
Okay,
I'm
they're
Laura
back.
Knoy. Today, we're discussing House Bill 544, known as the Divisive Concepts Bill. We've been talking with national observers on this. Kendall Thomas, a professor at Columbia Law School. And
national observers. Laura, you could have had a local hometown girl, Laura. You could have. No, I'm never on it. I'm never going to be on it. It's never going to happen. But it could have been. Could have had me, could have had Lily Tang Williams, could have had any number of people. National observers. People who don't even know what's in the flipping bill and haven't bothered to read 4 pages. National observers, please. I've never even heard of either of these people. God.
Race theory, and also Sindiso Mnisi Weeks, an assistant professor at UMass Boston. Now, for this part of our show, we're going to focus on New Hampshire voices. And with us now is Grace Kondecki, program coordinator with the American Friends Service Committee. She's been organizing opposition to House Bill 544. Grace, welcome back to the Exchange. Thanks for being with us.
More people opposed to it. Shocking.
Well,
shocking.
Why do you fundamentally disagree with this bill, Grace?
Yes, Grace.
So I fundamentally disagree with the bill, not only because of everything that our guests have already spoken to, but the fact that it is
everything our guests have already spoken to, which literally had nothing to do with the bill. That's why she disagrees with the bill. Okay, keep going.
What's being set up is a false equivalency. We have a bill that's being pushed, that was tried to be pushed through as a standalone bill, then was tabled, and now has been added to the state budget.
The bill was not tabled. The bill was tabled when it got added to the state budget. It got added to the state budget, and then the bill was tabled because there is no need for a separate bill when it is already in the state budget. That's why it got tabled. They're making it seem like, oh, there was just not interest in passing this bill. No, that's not the truth, man. It got added to the state budget to give it a significantly better shot of passing. It's already passed through the House, which they haven't told you, and I feel pretty confident it's going to make it. I really do, but we're going to see.
And it's being used as a false equivalency, as a way to hide a lot of the deep cuts that are being proposed in the budget. It's trying to...
Wait. As a way, what are you talking? It's being used to hide deep cuts in the budget? The bill got added to the budget because of Chris goddamn Sununu. That's why it got added to the budget. It wasn't to hide anything. The bill is 4 pages long. This is not trying to hide anything. It's not even hard.
Hide the wealth tax cuts that are being pushed through. And it's really trying to set up a straw man argument to say that, that it is it is racism, it is systemic racism, talking about systemic racism and talking about systemic sexism, and not actually addressing the disparities that are very much felt by Grant.
The bill does not prohibit you talking about systemic racism. The bill does not prohibit you talking about systemic sexism. And the bill was added to the budget because Chris Sununu threw his own party under the bus and declared, because he's kissing the ass of the Democrats, that he wants to veto the bill if it makes it. That's why it was added to the budget. It was not added to the budget to hide anything. It was added to the budget because of Chris goddamn Sununu. That's why.
Jesus. And have, especially during the pandemic, and instead of addressing those needs for education, for access to health,
she's making this up.
For economic security,
making this up.
We have our lawmakers trying to create a false argument and a false straw man in order to not really do what they need to do and address the material
fantasy
and directly affected needs of Granite Staters.
So, Grace, I've done a ton of reading about this, and I just want to ask you a couple questions.
Really, Laura? Really? You've done a ton of reading about this, but you don't even seem to have read the 4-page bill because you haven't pushed back on any of the numerous lies that your guests have already told. You've done a lot of reading on this, Laura? Really? Really? Then why have you pushed back on 0 lies? I was not planning on doing a goddamn live stream today. The only reason I did a live stream is because Laura Knoy, journalist, didn't do her fucking job.
Critics of critical race theory have put forward one that I've seen a lot, Grace, and I wonder what you think, is critical race theory, quote, makes kids apologize for being born white.
It does.
Makes students feel ashamed and guilty about their family history going back generations. That quote is actually from a local person, Lily Tang Williams, co-chair of the New Hampshire.
They just quoted Lily Tang Williams! Don't tell me you don't know that Lily Tang Williams exists. You just fucking quoted her. Why didn't you invite Lily Tang Williams on your show, Laura?
Hampshire Asian American Coalition. How do you see it, Grace? Is this included in critical race theory, making, as she says, white children apologize for being white.
I just want to say that if this person opposes anything that Lily Tang Williams said, she is a racist because Lily Tang Williams is Asian, and we need to stop Asian hate in this country. I feel very strongly that we need to stop Asian hate. So if you disagree with anything that Lily Tang Williams says when she is not there to defend herself or amplify on her beliefs, you're being a racist. Congratulations, Grace.
So I do want to, before I quickly answer that question, because I think it is an important one, to emphasize again that HB544 doesn't even address critical race theory. I mean, critical race theory is being used as sort of the boogeyman.
Then why does it matter? Why does it matter? If it doesn't address it, then why does it matter? And are you maybe going to make an attempt at defining what critical race theory is if you're saying the bill doesn't address it?
And by supporters, in order to make it seem as though it's really about, it's about sort of this idea of like reverse racism, which is disingenuous and untrue.
No, racism is just racism. There is no such thing as reverse racism. It's just racism.
So to address the question specifically, I mean, first of all, it is important. It is so vitally important for all of us.
Why is NHPR so afraid to have an Asian American woman on their network? Why are you guys so afraid? Why are you afraid of what an Asian American immigrant is going to say that you will talk about her, but you won't invite her on the show that was made for her? Why are you so afraid of Asians, NHPR? Don't you want to stop Asian hate? I know I want to stop Asian hate. So why won't you invite the Asian lady on the show instead of just quoting her out of context?
Including our children, to understand the true history of this
These
country.
people are unbelievable.
As a Black woman, as an immigrant, I have lived experience of racism. I have lived
who also has lived experience is Lily Tang Williams, who is an immigrant from China and grew up during the Cultural Revolution. She also has why doesn't Lily Tang Williams' lived experience matter? It's kind of racist, NHPR. It's kind of racist, Laura. Really. It's kind of racist that you're not inviting Lily Tang Williams on your show.
Experience of sexism, having lived here my entire life. And I think that New Hampshire, unfortunately, has...
Oh, so Grace lived in New Hampshire her entire life and is comparing her lived experience with racism to someone who grew up in China during the damn Cultural Revolution. Okay.
The idea that racism doesn't exist because people aren't shooting each other in the streets. But the reality is that racism does exist. It exists in the lived experiences of people. I definitely experienced it as a student going through the New Hampshire school system. And one thing that was very notable about my experiences in the school system was that there was never any mention of our Native American community. There was never...
They didn't do a land blessing during every class. They're racist. There were no land blessings. Alexander John says, I find it funny that they will never explain what critical race theory is. Why is it so hard to just be straightforward? Why indeed? Why indeed, Laura Kanoy, journalist, is it so hard to just be straightforward? That is a great question.
Any mention of Black history and all of the African American history and all of the things that we learned. There was not a critical look. We weren't taught. I was not taught to see the broad spectrum of our...
By the way, guys, just so you know, the only reason I can even do this live stream right now is when New Hampshire Public Radio fired me. I told them to go fuck themselves when they offered me a severance package, and that has paid off so much. Never take severance packages from places that you want to talk shit about later. You guys should have offered me more money. You should have offered me more money. God. Maybe I would have signed it, but not for the piddly severance that you were offering me. Go fuck yourselves.
History, both the good and the bad. And I think it really hamstrings our children because a lot of these things I did not learn until I actually went to college in my 30s. And it opened up a whole world of understanding because now I knew what I needed and what I had the tools in order to understand and navigate not only our history, but our current society. So
she's not saying anything. Word salad.
I think that
there's a
lot of emphasis placed on guilt.
You know what I need to do? I need to get special emojis for my channel members. But like every time someone says word, I need like a salad emoji. I need a mimosa emoji. I need also that. I'm going to work on that before Friday. I'm really going to try before happy hour on Friday to get some special members only emojis that we can use for like word salad and things like that. ABC did a story on critical race theory, did a fair shout out. They actually tried to show both sides. And then there's a link there. Okay. Thank you for that.
And discomfort, and feeling guilt and discomfort is not a bad thing. It is an opportunity to examine.
See, that emoji doesn't look like a salad to me. That doesn't, I guess it is a salad. I'm going to get a better salad emoji. We're going to have a premium salad emoji.
What happened? Why did this happen? And how can we prevent this from happening again?
Yes!
It is not an excuse not to.
Wait, hang on. I know I'm distracted by the chat right now, but yes, Reagan, yes. I will get a mounting emoji. I'm gonna have to consult with Joshua about what that emoji is. That could go south real quick, but we will develop a mounting emoji for sure.
Dive into the darker parts of our history, the darker parts of the ways that Black and brown people experience life in America. It is not an excuse not to see ourselves as a whole people, as a whole.
Literally, none of this has anything to do with the bill. None of what she's like, racism is bad. That's not an argument. That's not an argument against the bill. No one likes racism. I particularly don't like racism against Asian Americans myself. Like the type of racism that's being demonstrated by not having Lily Tang Williams on this show. Laura, journalist. FAIR, Foundation Against Intolerant New Racism. I know what FAIR is. I just have thoughts about FAIR. We're going to see what I genuinely hope that FAIR is successful in their mission. I will say that.
Nation, because if we're working towards being competitive in the global world, if we're looking towards being able to engage more fully in our own society and really have an impact, then we need to be able to examine the good and the bad in order for us to really have.
I have no idea what we're even talking about right now.
So many of us are working towards.
Well, and Grace, I want to go to a caller now, if I could, please. This is Stuart calling in from Norwich, Vermont. Hi, Stuart. You're on the exchange.
I used to live in Norwich.
James, thanks for being with us today.
This is going to be a liberal.
Hi there. I'm wondering if you can hear me.
Sure, Stuart. We can hear you fine. Go ahead, please.
I think I might actually know who this is. For real, like in real life. But I'm not positive, so I'm not going to say.
Well, I've heard a very one-sided exposition of HB544. I've also heard a very one-sided exposition of critical race theory. And I have some practical experience as a member of a minority as well. I mean, I remember my grandparents coming to this
Stuart.
With the clothes on their back.
Lay it on them, Stuart.
And succeeding. And that was in spite of the racism, so-called, that these people are talking about today on the program. But what I object to is my grandchildren being taught that they are systemically racist, that they are suffering from white guilt, and that they're guilty because they are white, and they're only 5 and 7 years old. And the notion that they are white supremacists, or that they are suffering from white guilt, or that they are guilty because they're white, to me is absolutely wrong.
Has that happened in their schools, Stuart?
Yes, it has, Laura. Yes, it has. It 100% has. I have all the documentation. If you'd ever like to act like an actual journalist and look at the documentation of what's been going on in the schools, I'm happy to walk you through it, Laura. Anytime in your last month at NPR, because you're retiring probably because they made you a propagandist, I am happy to show you the evidence that what Stuart just described is literally happening in schools in New Hampshire and Vermont and all around the country right now. Student of history says, I'm going to be honest, listening to her saying Black and brown people should see themselves as one people, why does this sound like, I don't know how to say that. But I'm sure you're right.
Did that happen to your grandchildren in the school?
They are now being taught in
Laura,
in Hanover.
journalists.
That that they are
base, Stuart. Yes.
That they're simply
Stuart
that they're
2024
from white supremacy. And there was a meeting where we had 7th graders, okay, older kids who are writing against HB544. And the reason that they're writing against HB544 is that they've had a tutorial. There have been meetings for the last 2 years that have been...
Wait, their teachers taught them to write against the bill? This doesn't surprise me at all, because when I testified for the bill in Rhode Island, which was a total shit show and sham, but when I testified for the bill in Rhode Island, teachers literally assigned their students to call in and testify, and pretty much none of the students even knew what they were talking about. Teachers are actually assigning their students to be against this bill, so this does not surprise me, not one little bit. You tell them, Stuart.
To teach critical race theory, and it's most unfortunate that that this is going on in the back room, and now suddenly, 2 years later.
Oh, Laura Kanoy, journalist, is about to interrupt him because he's saying things that she doesn't like.
2 years later, we're seeing in Hanover, we're seeing that the DEI committee is now being part of the actual SAU.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion. And Stuart, let's address with Grace Kondecki your concern, and it raises something that I raised a minute ago, Grace. I have read a lot among critics of critical race theory that, little kids are being told that they're oppressors, that, they're putting people in boxes that way. You hear the concern in Stuart's.
Yeah, I know I just don't know how to say it. I'm sorry. German for one empire, one people. It's most notable as a big thing from Germany's leaders from 1930. Okay, so bad Nazi stuff. Thank you, student history. I appreciate it.
Grace, and I just wonder what you think, Grace.
Yeah, so I mean, I definitely appreciate that, as a parent, there is concern for your children, and that you want them to be, equipped with the right tools and to be made with the right tools so that they feel that they have,
A parent says, my child is being taught that they are an oppressor because they're white. And this woman responds, I hear your concerns as a parent.
Agency and ability to be able to navigate the world and not be made to feel, to bear the burdens of the past. I would invite you, Stuart, and all other parents and adults to actually really take some time to, read some of the books that are available out there that have.
Maybe if you just read How to Be an Anti-Racist, it will make you feel better about your children and your grandchildren being taught that they're racist because they're white. Have you read How to Be an Anti-Racist? Have you read White Fragility? Maybe that will make you feel better about us teaching in schools that your children are racist.
Examine our history through a critical race lens, because the issue is that critical race theory is a construct is a way for us to understand the world. And that I think that it is
a construct. So you mean that critical race theory is not verifiable fact? Is that what I'm hearing, Grace? You just said it's a construct. It's a model, not fact.
Very important that we understand that racism, systemic racism,
I know, right?
And white supremacy is a force that has evolved over time. The racism and systemic racism that we saw in the 50s and 60s is not what systemic racism necessarily looks like here in 2021. Obviously, history is
right, because you've changed the definition of racism. You've changed the definition. Alexander John, she didn't even deny that's what it is. No, she didn't. She didn't. She didn't address anything that our based friend Stuart just said. Not addressing it at all. Saying, maybe if you read How to Be an Anti-Racist, you'll understand.
Continuum. And so what happens in the past morphs and changes into structures that we have today. But we're talking about racism and sexism at a structural level. And so when we're looking at data and going beyond individual and interpersonal
if you're looking at racism at a structural level, then why do you need to teach students that they are racist? Then why do you need to teach it in schools? What did students do to create that structure? What do they have to do with breaking down that structure? If this is really just about let's just concede a point here, which I'm not actually conceding, but let's play devil's advocate. Let's just say that systemic racism is a real thing. Now, I do actually believe that there are questions that we need to and conversations we need to have about race, but let's just offer that maybe it's a real thing. What are school children going to do to fix it? Nothing. You gain nothing by teaching these students that they are racist. You gain nothing. So don't. I mean, come on. Let's have a real conversation here. Student of history says, yes, CRT is your personal lens and ideology, just like mine is F the Fed. I don't think we should be teaching F the Fed, but Waco and Ruby Ridge should. Yeah, I think, don't disagree with you.
Experiences, which are vital because we each contribute to our societies, but it's important for us to be able to see our history as a whole, so that I know it's so good to hear that your family was able to come to the United States and be able to make it. But that's not
just because your oppressed family was able to overcome their inherent oppression doesn't mean that everyone is able to overcome their inherent oppression. Don't you want everyone to overcome that? Don't you want equality of outcomes and not equality of opportunities? Because equality of opportunities means sometimes people fail. It means that sometimes people aren't successful. We really want equality of outcomes, don't we? Doesn't that sound more fair?
Case for everyone, and that their success does not mean that systemic racism and systemic sexism.
Wait. So is she delegitimizing Stewart's lived experience? After I just had to listen to 10 minutes talking about her, giving her lived experience as evidence of anything, she is now delegitimizing the lived experience of an oppressed immigrant? Interesting.
Sexism do not exist. It means that they were able to be successful and still in many ways in spite of systemic racism and sexism, because the data shows clearly, especially when we look at just poverty rate.
The data shows clearly that Black and brown people just can't be successful in this society. And we don't even care about Asian people anymore. We stopped caring about Asian people about 2 weeks ago, but the data shows that Black and brown people just can't be successful unless we modify the system. Okay. Please. Jenny's getting inky with it, says, what does any of this have to do with kids being taught guilt? And did he say he came to the US? Isn't she presuming he could? Yes. He said he's like not white. So apparently Stewart's experience does not count, but hers does.
In New Hampshire, we're looking at 1 in 14 people are living 1 in 14 white people are living below the poverty line. We're looking at 1 in 5 Black people in New Hampshire living below the poverty line. Looking at 1 in 6.
I wonder if she thinks that those 1 in 14 white people who are living below the poverty line have white privilege. Bet she does.
6 Latin and Hispanic people living below the poverty line. So it's really important for us, in order to use critical race, in order to critical race theory, in order to see the systems and the structures as a whole. And I understand that it can feel really jarring if you're not as familiar with it, or it's new information or something that.
I really want Stewart to be like, what does any of this have to do with my kids and grandkids being taught that they're racist? Nothing. The answer is nothing. She can't answer for that.
You haven't necessarily had to address, but it is something that does exist. It is real. And with some time taken to do some research, to be in conversation with people, to read
why don't you just go educate yourself, Stewart?
Scholars who
have you educated yourself? Have you really done the work?
You start to see that it is a lens through which we can start to really critically think about.
Everyone get their salad emojis out. I want to see a chat full of salad emojis right now. Salad.
In our teachings, in order to equip.
I'll get you a better emoji on Friday.
Ourselves, in order to continue building the solutions we need.
Yeah, and Grace, I do apologize for interrupting you there. But real quickly, in terms of teaching, though, Stuart's upset because he's...
Is Laura Kanoy, journalist, actually going to act like a journalist and push back on the 5 minutes of word salad that we just have to listen to? Oh my God. Is it going to happen? Laura, are you still a journalist? Is there still a journalist in there, Laura? Give me hope.
As his 5 and 6-year-old grandkids are being told that they are white supremacists. Does that sound a stone thrown too far in terms of critical race theory?
One would think. Thank
Well,
you. Thank you. Okay, I've ragged on Laura Kanoy a lot so far, and I just want to say thank you, Laura. Thank you for proving that you actually know how to push back on bullshit when it's spewed on your show. I don't know why you didn't push back on the bullshit in the first half of your show. Maybe you didn't read the bill. I have no idea. But thank you for this one moment of proving that you actually do know how to be a journalist and push back on bullshit when it is right directly in front of you. Thank you for proving me correct, that you still know what that looks like, even though you're acting like a propagandist with this show.
And I would challenge to say, like, are the children really being told that they should feel guilty for being white supremacists? Or are they being told?
But is that really happening, Stuart? Is it really? Is it really? Yes, it is.
Told that about white supremacy, about the...
Grace, you still there?
I think if there is...
Go ahead.
Yep, and I think if there is guilt around that, there is difficulty around that. I can't imagine teachers telling our young children that they should feel guilty. I think what teachers are trying to impart is that there is reparation and healing, and we have to come together in order to...
Teachers aren't. Don't pay attention to the mountains of evidence that teachers are teaching this. They're really not. Don't believe your lying eyes. Don't believe the evidence that we can put right in front of you right now that says the teachers are actually teaching this. They're not. You're mistaken. You don't know what they're actually teaching. I'm sure it's not that. Yes, it is.
Understand the impact of white supremacy, because the impact of white supremacy we saw when Breonna Taylor was killed in her grad. The impact of white supremacy we've seen in front of our eyes with the results of with George Floyd's murder. We see
George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. I'm losing this fight. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor.
Again, I go back to that. Feeling guilt is not a bad thing. It's important for us to understand.
She just said the quiet part out loud. Feeling guilty isn't bad. It's not bad for them to feel guilty for things that aren't their fault when they're children and their brains are still forming. Feeling guilty, don't worry about them. It's okay. It's okay that they're being taught that they're racist and they should feel guilty because of the skin color that they were born with. It's all okay. It's not going to hurt them. It'll be fine. This is coming, by the way, from the same types of people that... And this is literally being taught in colleges. I did an interview with a woman who went back to college in her 40s, and she said that this was being taught in her school. These are the same people who are like, it's not really that abnormal for things that you don't want to happen to children. We shouldn't teach that those things are abnormal at all. Really, we know how to treat the children. The children will be fine when bad things happen to them. And of course, I can't say those bad things because they'll get demonetized. So, but you guys know what I'm talking about.
Well, and Grace, I'm sorry to let you go there. We could do maybe 5 hours on this topic, but for now, we're going to move.
Hey, Laura, I would do 5 hours with you on this topic any day of the week. I'd bring Lily Tang Williams with me. We'd have a great conversation. I'm happy to lay out the evidence anytime, Laura. You guys have my number, NHPR. You guys call me. You have my number. You do. You have my number. You can call me.
Vaughn, I really appreciate you being with us again today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's Grace Kandecki, program coordinator with the American Friends Service Committee. She's been organizing, as we heard, opposition to House Bill 544. With us now is Representative Keith Ammon. He's a Republican from Hillsborough, one of the sponsors of the bill.
All right, let's get psyched. Keith is coming on. Keith is going to tell them what's what. We're in Keith's corner. Keith is a hero. He is a hero.
Ammon, welcome. Thank you for being with us.
Oh, thank you, Laura. Welcome to your guests as well.
It's a big discussion, Representative Ammon, and we appreciate your time. Why were you motivated to sponsor this bill? What problem were you seeking to resolve there?
Oh, good question. So I have a question. Are we doing advocacy against the bill, or are we doing journalism?
Keith Ammon, based hero. advocacy against this bill or journalism? Keith, based.
The discussion seems pretty well stacked against one side.
Well, let's hear your point of view. Tell us why you put the bill forward.
Okay. So House Bill 544, the germ of the idea came from a university professor at one of our state universities. And I put the bill in because I think it addresses an actual issue. And what's interesting about the bill is people can read the same list of things and see two different sides to it. We've heard one side this morning, and the other side sees this as a non-discrimination list of topics. And so that's some of the motivation behind the bill, is that we're seeing this being advocated for. I think one of your guests said there's a difference between talking about white supremacy and getting people to believe it. And that is a distinction in this bill. If you look on the section 1, 10C2, it says that people shouldn't have to adopt or believe something listed in that list.
Yeah.
Oh, you're going to interrupt him? Hang on. Laura Kanoy, journalist who just let a random person ramble on for 15 minutes, is going to interrupt the state representative who introduced the bill when he's talking about the actual provisions. Notice how she swooped right in. Keith, can I get your perspective on the bill? And Keith is like, well, let's look at some of the. And she's like, oh, Keith, we can't actually talk about the bill on air. Journalist.
State legislatures around the country. How much is New Hampshire's bill, Representative Ammon, part of this broader national context?
New Hampshire was the first one, Laura.
Well, I don't think there's any great conspiracy behind this bill. It's based on an executive order that the Trump administration put in September. Yeah. And I think New Hampshire was the first state to file the bill back in November. And so as news.
We're number one. We didn't get it passed because of our stupid governor, but like whatever, it's still working on it. Doctor, give me the news. I got a bad case of excluding you. No red pill gonna cure my ill. Got a bad case of excluding you. Thank you, Joe Sullivan.
Gone out about the bill. I think other states have just copied it naturally. And I think it's passed in some form of it is passed in 3 different states.
I want to read a couple emails that I've gotten, Representative Ammon, from listeners about this, and I've gotten a lot. Here's one from Robin who says, I've lived in New Hampshire my whole life. I went to Merrimack Valley High School, where I don't remember us ever discussing systemic racism, sexism, the systems that keep rich people rich and poor people poor, or the real history of the found.
Well, guess what? The bill doesn't prevent you from discussing the systems that keep rich people rich and poor people poor. Problem solved. The bill doesn't prevent it. Congratulations.
Of our country. I never thought about the fact that our entire school was white. All our teachers were white. It wasn't until I went to college and started.
You live in New Hampshire. Of course, everyone is white. Not everyone, but most people. It's New Hampshire, for crying out loud.
Diversity in action and discussing it in class that I began to realize the privilege I have and want to work to make life.
It wasn't until I went to college and was indoctrinated by my college professors that I realized that being white was bad. That's what this says.
And opportunity equal for everyone. Robin says the idea of creating a law prohibiting the discussion of divisive concepts in New Hampshire classrooms is not good for our children.
As I have already pointed out, the law does not ban the discussion of the concepts in the classroom. It bans the teachers teaching them as verifiable fact while stifling dissent or calling people that disagree with them racist. That is what the bill bans. It does not ban the discussion of these concepts in the classroom. That is a lie. And Laura Kanoy, journalist, is choosing to read this email on the air of the plethora of emails that she apparently received. She is reading an email on the air that is provably false based on a simple reading of the bill. She chose that email to read on air. Let's just keep that in mind. The bill specifically says that discussion of these concepts is allowed, and they're trying to tell you it's not because they're propagandists, not journalists.
Teachers, if you ban talking about uncomfortable subjects, then you can never grow and gain any perspective.
If only the bill didn't ban talking about uncomfortable subjects. Oh, wait, it doesn't? It doesn't? Oh, maybe we should have read the 4-page bill before we did a whole show on it, Laura Canoy, journalist.
What about that? We've heard a lot from listeners about this, Representative Ammon, that, yes, it's uncomfortable, but that's how we grow and learn. I wonder what you think there.
Interesting. That's an interesting experience that young woman had.
Come on, Keith.
The
Come
list
on.
of divisive concepts, I'll read a couple of them in case listeners haven't heard of them. One race or sex.
Keith is like, I'm just going to read the bill. You haven't read the bill so far. You haven't talked about I'm just going to read the bill. Maybe that's what we should do. We should just read the bill.
Is inherently superior to another race or sex. And again, this is about advocacy for this. Or an individual should be discriminated against or receive adverse treatment solely or partly because of his or her race or sex. So we wouldn't want to use taxpayer money to fund those ideas that were different in superior or inferior ways. And there's a section in the bill that talks about nothing in this chapter shall be construed to prohibit discussing as part of a larger course of academic instruction.
Yes.
The divisive concepts listed in RSA 10C1 in an objective manner and without endorsement. So
you can discuss it, you just have to do it objectively.
Exactly, Laura! Congratulations! At minute, 45 of 56, we have gotten to the point in your show when you have not challenged any of your other guests that you could have gotten to based on reading the fucking bill. You could have gotten there by reading the bill. But we have now only at the end of the show gotten to the point where Laura Canoy, journalist, is acknowledging that the bill does not ban discussion of anything.
Exactly.
Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Hang on. Yeah, is that what you're saying? Yes, that's what I'm saying. Muhammad says we don't always see eye to eye, but overall your journey over the past few years has been fascinating and uplifting. Here's to your next mimosa. Thank you, Muhammad. I will be having that mimosa on Friday at 3 p.m. when we will be doing happy hour and playing Unwoke Bingo and doing all those things. So mark your calendar if you haven't joined us for a happy hour. You want to join us for happy hour on Friday, 3 p.m.
Yeah, but objectivity that's kind of subjective too, isn't it?
No! Laura, we made so much progress. We made so much progress in those last few minutes when you actually acknowledged the central tenet of the bill, and now you're saying that objectivity is subjective? No, it's not. It's real fucking simple. Don't teach these concepts as if they are fact because they are not fact. That is not subjective, Laura. We were almost there. We almost made it. You almost became an actual journalist again, and now we've descended into journalist. Propagandist.
Everybody has kind of a different view on that. So who would decide if it was taught objectively?
No, literally no one has a different view of that. Literally no one, Laura, has a different view of that. God.
Who would sort of police that?
Well, it would be up to the local school board.
And I'm sorry I'm yelling and I'm about to lose my voice and I don't know how the volume thing is working out, but I just can't. I can't do this without alcohol. This is why we have happy hour Fridays. These people are breaking me, but I'm not giving up. And I will not stop calling them out on their nonsense. Objectivity is subjective. Are you fucking kidding me?
And discussion with the parent. And then, of course, we have the Department of Education that can, administer. I'm sorry, I'm getting another call for some reason. Administer.
Laura's we got rid of him. Oh, good.
That's how that works in the education system.
Yeah, and Kate emailed us about local control. She says she's concerned that this bill denies fundamental constitutionally protected freedom to state employees. It's, she says, HB544 is the New Hampshire state government's direct control of the speech of the people in New Hampshire.
The state does not have constitutional protection. The employees, when they are acting on behalf of the state, do not have constitutional protection. They are acting as an agent of the state. They are not individuals in that specific instance. They can do whatever the fuck they want to do when they are not at work. When they are not acting as agents of the state, they have all of their freedom of speech that they could possibly want, and they can host house parties where they bring Robin DiAngelo in to tell people that they're all a little racist. They can do whatever the hell they want. They just can't do it when they're funded on our dime, Laura, and you're smart enough to know the difference. I know you are.
Sure, we cannot live freely if we cannot speak freely. It's a long email, Kate. I'm sorry, I won't read the whole one, but she's basically saying it's incompatible with the Republican Party's identity around local control to tell, businesses, universities, schools what they can or cannot say. Can you address that this is, according to Kate and others who've written to me this morning, that this goes against local?
Well, according to Carlin and lots of lawyers that Carlin has talked to, this doesn't violate the First Amendment. In fact, teaching critical race theory does violate the First Amendment because it compels the speech of the citizens on behalf of the state. But let's listen to Kate, random person that has emailed NHPR. She's obviously an authority, Kate.
Control.
So you mentioned free speech. I'll leave the local control issue aside for a minute, but the free speech issue, this is about taxpayer money being spent for trainings and for employee trainings, especially in state institutions. We have a former Supreme Court Chief Justice, Bob Lynn, who wrote up an opinion about the free speech aspect of this bill. And
right, I saw
he
that.
came to the conclusion that, the government, when you're operating under the aegis of the government and you're paid for by taxpayer money, you don't have free speech in that capacity. On your own time, you do.
Former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court in New Hampshire, I think, is going to trump an email from Kate off the internet. I'm just saying.
So, in terms of businesses, I did want to ask you about that too. As I'm sure you know, the president of the New Hampshire Business and Industry Association put out a message against this bill, saying it sends the wrong message to employers.
Guess what? If businesses don't want to do business with the state, then they don't have to. But if they do businesses with the state, they can't teach their employees that they're racist. It's really that simple. If you don't want to follow the law, don't do business with the state. You are not entitled to those state contracts. You are not entitled to our taxpayer dollars when you're forcing your employees to say that they are racist, compelling their speech, which is in violation of the First Amendment. Don't do business with the state.
Who recognize the importance of open, honest, and yes, he said, sometimes difficult and uncomfortable conversation.
Why in the holy hell are you talking about systemic racism in the office? There is nothing to gain from that. Literally nothing is going to happen because you do a diversity training in which Robin DiAngelo comes in to tell all the white people that they're racist. No good is going to come of that. You accomplish nothing. And if you want to be able to do that, it's real simple. Don't take state taxpayer money.
With employees about the issue of race and gender discrimination. He said to prohibit some employers from engaging in these discussions, as the language from HB544 does, will leave them vulnerable to race and or gender discrimination. So I wonder what you think, Representative.
Wait. Did he argue that if employers can't do anti-racist training, then their employees are more likely to have racism? Why are you hiring racists then? That makes no sense.
Ammon, the group representing the state's major employers is nervous about this. What can you say to alleviate those concerns?
I would say just don't do business with the state if you want to do anti-racist training. Don't do business with the state. Real simple. Choose not to take those sweet, sweet state contracts.
About the impact of this bill in the workplace.
And the other thing I would say too is that when this type of training is executed in organizations, it reduces team psychological safety, it reduces morale, it reduces productivity. And I don't know why the state would want to invest money in organizations that are not performing at their highest level, because it fundamentally means the organizations aren't going to be able to fulfill on those contracts anyway. So why are we paying them? Why are we paying them?
Well, this bill only affects taxpayer-funded activity. So if you're a private business and you're not contracting with the state of New Hampshire, you would have no nexus with this bill. This is only about how taxpayer money is spent, and that it wouldn't fund ideas like one race or sex is superior to another race or sex. So, to the extent that the BIA's membership contracts with the state, you don't have a right as a business to contract with the state, and the state has a right to put restrictions on that contract.
Okay, I want to repeat what Keith just said. You do not have a right as a business to contract with the state. And if you do choose to contract with the state has the right to put limitations on that contract. If you don't want to abide by the limitations, don't sign the contract. It is that simple. The state can give their money to another business. You are not entitled to state money.
So, yeah, so they wouldn't be subject to this unless they contracted with the state, which I'm guessing a lot of BIA members do. I don't know. You tell me, Representative Ammon.
So they can make the choice not to.
I don't know their membership, but I'd imagine that some of them do. I mean, that's my only guess, since they took a position against the bill.
Well, there's been a lot said about this bill, and I'm feeling badly because I have a lot of emails that I'm not going to get to today, but I really appreciate people writing in. I know, Representative Ammon, that you've been upset that you feel like there's been a lot of misinformation about this bill, what it would do and what it would not do. So I do want to give you the opportunity to correct some of that misinformation that you've heard.
Okay, I appreciate that. So this bill does not ban discussing or teaching history. It does not limit discussion of slavery, women's suffrage, or even discussion of the divisive concepts themselves, as long as you do it in an objective manner. It does not ban diversity and inclusion trainings. So agency diversity and inclusion efforts, this is language in the bill. Agency diversity and inclusion efforts shall first and foremost encourage agency employees not to judge each other by their color, race, ethnicity, sex, or any other characteristic protected by the federal or state law. And the bill doesn't limit free speech because the government doesn't have free speech.
Bing.
Free speech is for the individuals. And a lot of times people conflate the government with the private sector or with society. The government doesn't have free speech. And lastly, it doesn't apply to any private sector institution or school, university, unless they choose to contract with the state.
Yeah, which is pretty hard to avoid, though, right? I mean, the state gives money to...
No, it is not actually hard to run a business in the state of New Hampshire and not contract with the state. I successfully run a business in the state of New Hampshire. I have since 2012. I have never contracted with the state. Not once. Have not even had any desire to. It is not difficult to run a business when you do not contract with the state. The state is not the only place that you can get contracts. That is Laura, come on, journalist.
University system and public schools. Right? So if the school gets public money from the state, which they all do, they would have to abide by this, wouldn't they?
Yes. That means that the University of New Hampshire would have to stop telling their white employees that their role is to shut up and accept this ideology. Yes, that's what it means, Laura. That's what it means.
Bye.
If it's in the contract that they signed, then they would have to abide by it. And again,
Representative Ammon. Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I wish we had more time, but the dictates of radio tell me that I have to take a short break. So thank you very much for being...
For the record, there is still 10 minutes left of this show, so Laura did indeed have more time
with us.
But we can't be talking sense. We can't actually be talking about what the bill says or how it's implemented. You know, she brought on these crazy professors that have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. She brought on this woman that runs a nonprofit or something, or is program coordinator for a nonprofit, has no idea what they're talking about. But the state representative who actually introduced the bill and wants to actually talk about the bill, we got to get him off the air. He gets like 5 flipping minutes. That's it. Everyone else gets all the time, even though there's 10 minutes left in the show right now. Let's see what they have to say.
And we could have talked a lot more, but I really appreciate you being on.
In fact, you could have talked a lot more, Laura, journalist.
That's Representative Keith Ammon. Again, he's a Republican from Hillsborough. He's one of the sponsors of the bill that we talked about.
Guys, this is a lot more. Can I just tell you, this is like literally the first time I've listened to NHPR since I worked there, and it's like making me feel dirty. I don't know how. Oh, it's making me feel so bad.
Calls and emails coming up after a short break, and we'll go back to our two national analysts. So keep it right here, listeners.
Wait, they're going to go back to the two national analysts, the crazy people that have no idea. They had the state representative to talk about the bill. They gave him like 5 minutes. And now we're going to go back to our national analyst. We already gave half an hour at the beginning because we want to take emails from listeners. Okay, Laura Knoy, journalist.
Exchange on New Hampshire Public Radio. This is The Exchange. I'm Laura Knoy. Tomorrow on The Exchange, who's not getting vaccinated in New Hampshire and why?
Me.
Join us for that conversation
tomorrow
morning live at 9. Today, we're talking about House Bill 544, what's called the Divisive Concepts Bill, and the national debate it has evoked about critical race theory. Our guests for our remaining 10 minutes are Kendall Thomas. He's a professor at Columbia Law School.
They're bringing back the crazy people. Jeez.
Also, Sindiso Mnisi Weeks, assistant professor at the School for Global Inclusion and Social Development at UMass Boston. And both of you would like to go straight back to our callers. And Dan's joining us from Hanover. Dan, thanks for waiting. You're on The Exchange. Go ahead,
Dan. This is Dan Richards. Dan Richards is awesome. Dan Richards has been fighting for this bill. He is a good man. Let's listen to what Dan has to say. Good. I'm glad they got to him.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I've got really 3 points to make. And the first is that if the panelists are being intellectually honest, I think they have to actually cite the language in the bill, which clearly states that the discussion of the topics that are being described actually aren't prohibitive. So if you look at the language of the bill, it actually says nothing in this chapter shall prevent agencies or contractors from promoting racial, cultural, or ethnic diversity or inclusiveness, and that nothing in this chapter
Dan Richards, hero,
to prohibit discussing as part of a larger course of academic instruction
hero
any of the concepts listed. So that's number one. Number two, I think it's really important that people understand exactly what critical race theory is, because I don't think it has been properly defined. It was developed by professors at Harvard Law School back in the 70s. And basically what it assumes is that racism is present in everything, and that it divides society into oppressors and oppressed, and that nobody is neutral. So not being racist, if you don't believe that you are racist, that's not acceptable. Because if you don't believe that you're racist and you're not anti-racist, then you're actually racist, according to this ideology. It seeks equity, which is a term that is used with great frequency. And equity, people need to understand, is not equality that is being sought. It actually seeks equality of outcome, not of opportunity, which is contrary both to our laws and to the founding principles of this country. And the other thing that it does is it seeks to do something which is to dismantle the colorblind framework of our society. It actually wants to categorize people first and foremost by their race, by their skin color, which is just not the way that most Americans view each other. And
so, Dan, I'm glad. I'm sorry to interrupt. It's just boy, we're really running low on time. I do have the bill in front of me, and you're right. It says nothing shall be construed to prohibit discussing the divisive concepts. It does go on to say, though, in an objective manner, and it seems to me objectivity is in and of itself subjective.
She said it again. Laura Knoy, journalist. Objectivity is subjective. Oh my God. Dan Richards lays out these clear arguments because he's a stud, and Laura Knoy's like, objectivity is subjective, Dan. I mean, Laura, you're a journalist, right? Is objectivity when you're a journalist subjective? Are journalists subjectively objective? Could we make the argument? If we apply this whole thing that Laura Knoy just said to journalism, is Laura Knoy saying that she's not an objective journalist? Oh my God, I'm shocked. You mean that Laura Knoy, journalist, is actually projecting her own issues with being a little propagandist at NHPR by saying that objectivity is subjective? Really, Laura? Objectivity is subjective. Okay.
somebody would have to decide whether this passes muster or not.
Well,
So there is some constraints there.
Yeah, no question about it. But there's a real issue here, and that is, are you forcing somebody to believe what you believe, which is that some people should be discriminated against, or that society is systemically racist, or are you presenting the facts and allowing the listener to make that determination based on those facts that are presented? And that leads me to my third point, which is it's very often that people confuse core.
Common Cure says, isn't Laura accidentally implying that CRT is subjective? Well, in fact, she is. In fact, Laura is implying that there is no such thing as objectivity in the world, that everything is purely subjective, including journalists. Right, Laura? Right? You're a subjective journalist? Is that what you're telling us? That you bring subjectivity into journalism? I am shocked. I am shocked that after spending 2 hours screaming about a propaganda piece that was put out with public money, stewards of the public dollar indeed,
Relation with causation. Just because there are
come on, guys, let's get that last like. Let's do it. Come on.
That are suffering does not necessarily mean that the cause.
We need 2 likes now.
Is systemic racism or racism in general.
Well, and Dan, I'm sorry, I got to let you go just because I got.
Dan, I'm sorry. I have to let you go because you're making too much sense, and I have to go back to my national analysts who no one has ever heard of to get their opinion.
3 minutes left, and I want to bring our guests in, but thank you very much for calling in today. And
5 minutes.
Professor Thomas, to you, he had some thoughts about systemic racism, including the idea that racism is present in everything. As you understand it, is that what critical race theory is about, Professor Thomas?
Yes.
Absolutely not. I've heard that misconception before, and I want to thank
liar.
Dan, actually, because Dan is interested, it seems to me, in having the conversation in a way that
Dan is interested in kicking your guys' ass is what Dan is interested in.
This bill is not. I want to repeat again that this bill will shut down conversation about institutional racism.
Kendall, the host of the show has just said that this bill has a provision that does not prevent these ideas from being discussed. It has just been finally, at long last, after an hour, it has been conceded that there is an actual provision in the bill that does not prevent these concepts from being discussed. Why are you coming in as a professor at Columbia Law School? Why are you coming in and saying, we can't discuss these issues after everyone involved has just conceded, yeah, there's that little section at the end of the bill that says you can discuss whatever the fuck you want? Please.
Because it sees the idea of institutional racism itself as a divisive concept. Dan talks a lot, as did Representative Ammons, about what the bill actually says. I'm a lawyer, and I know that
Really? You had us all fooled that you're a lawyer. You had us all fooled there, Kendall.
The law works in a way that requires us to pay attention to not only what a bill says, but what it does, and we ask what it's intended to do. Right. And what I'm worried about is that this bill is going to be understood, and Dan himself conceded, as a bill that is itself propagating what we have come to realize.
No, Dan conceded nothing.
Concept.
He did not
Namely,
concede
this
that.
idea that America is and has always been a colorblind nation, and that if you challenge that idea, you yourself are being racist. You yourself are engaged.
Kendall, you literally said that earlier in the show. You literally said that colorblind racism is a thing. You literally said that earlier in the show. Did you forget 45 fucking minutes ago when you literally said that? I heard it, Kendall. I'm not going to rewind because I'm going to fuck up this recording and we're like this close from being done. But you said this earlier in the show. BB says, thanks, Dr. K, for keeping us sane. I'm keeping myself sane, man. You guys are coming along with the ride. I'm happy to have you.
In divisiveness. I think this bill is an example of the very divisive politics that the supporters of the bill claim. I'm
not divisive. You're divisive. You're the ones that are being divisive. It's not us. It's you. stupid Trump supporters.
They want to address. And I will say this further. In 1954, the Supreme Court of the United States, in a very famous case called Brown versus the Board of Education, said that public education is the very foundation of good citizenship.
You know what the Supreme Court has also decided? The Supreme Court has also decided that teachers are employees of the state and are therefore not allowed to teach whatever the fuck they want, and that the state can put parameters on what they can teach because teachers are agents of the state. That has actually also been decided by the Supreme Court. We talked about it in my previous live stream that I did right before this.
Schools are the place in which young people...
Kendall should know that because Kendall's a lawyer, remember? Kendall should know that the Supreme Court has also decided that teachers are employees of the state.
Learn what it means to be part of our great American democracy. And if we allow legislation like this to be adopted, it seems to me that we are going to be encouraging a level of illiteracy among our young people about the actual history of this country.
You can't teach history with this bill. This bill prevents us from teaching history. We can't teach it. Okay. Let's calm down, Kendall, who hasn't read the bill and apparently doesn't want to listen when everyone else is like, this bill doesn't prevent you from teaching anything.
And that illiteracy is the illiteracy that subscribes to the view that color blindness is the only legitimate framework or perspective with which to understand and study our history and our present. I would point out too that Representative Ammon says that the only thing the bill outlaws is advocacy. Well, the word advocacy nowhere appears in the bill. It says you cannot teach or instruct people to adopt or believe any of the divisive concepts.
That's literally what advocacy is, Kendall. That's what advocacy is. My God.
What?
Yeah.
I think
Professor Thomas,
that is a huge
go ahead.
problem. And
I'm so sorry to jump in on you there, but I did want to
well,
give Professor Amnisi Weeks a chance to weigh in before we close out the show, and I do apologize for that. Professor Amnisi Weeks, you know, are we going to figure this out, or are we going to keep fighting about this?
We're going to keep fighting. We're going to keep fighting, Laura.
That there might be a coming together on some of these tough concepts.
No, there's not going to be coming together.
There is hope, Laura, because there is the opportunity to continue having conversation. I just wanted to observe that with respect to the statements that were made by Representative Ammon and Dan from Hanover, we don't have only one legal opinion on this issue. There actually was a challenge in the U.S. District Court in California and San Jose, which was decided in December 2020 about the text of HB544. And in that, the court actually decided that it does violate the First Amendment.
And they would have lost on appeal.
It does also violate due process because of the fact that, even as you pointed out, this idea of objectivity is not actually very easily discernible. And so we know that actually
objectivity is subjective. Objectivity is subjective. That's what we're going with today. Objectivity is subjective.
Right. And the governor has said he will veto it. Yeah. Oh, Professor Amnisi Weeks.
Look at what they did. They got Keith in there for 5 minutes, and then they got their little advocates on, their little activists on at the end to be like, well, he's wrong about all these things, and the governor said he was going to veto it anyway. Governor's not going to get his budget if he vetoes it. So you do it, Chris. You do it. You ain't going to have a budget, dude. The House Republicans have already told you that. So, guys, that brings us to the end of this episode. I have almost lost my voice. I hope you enjoyed me ripping NHPR a new one and Laura Kanoy, journalist. Now, if you want to do something, hang on. I have a different thing. I want to show you guys this. Okay. So one of the things that the Exchange did earlier today is they sent out a little message asking people to email them what they think. So if you want to get in touch with the Exchange, it is exchange@nhpr.org, and you can let them know exactly what you thought of their show today. I think that'd be a fun activity. You don't have to do it, but you can. All right, guys. That's all I have. I actually have to go see my husband, who I feel like I haven't seen in 3 days, but it was important. It was important to point out. I had no idea there were going to be this many lies. I had no idea this was actually going to be that bad. I had no idea that Laura Kanoy, journalist, was going to take the position that objectivity is subjective twice in one episode. But here we are in 2021 when everything is racist. All right, guys, I gotta go. Please, again, join me for my live stream on Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. It's going to be happy hour. We're going to play Unwoke Bingo. I'm going to have some awesome emojis in the chat. I'm going to work on that tomorrow. All right, guys, take care. Have a good rest of your day.